So it's uHangout time, and today I am joined by Kevin. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing very good, thank you, mate. As always, we do a little bit of an introduction at the beginning. So, obviously, how did you get involved with Umbraco, Kevin?
I was actually, this is going to sound terrible, but it was actually forced upon me a couple years ago when I took a new job. And never heard of it before. Then I decided I'm only going to be useful for my employer if I understand it.
Yep.
So it was bestowed upon me, and now I bestow it on others when I can.
Awesome. So that was a couple of years ago. So,
Yep.
So obviously, yeah, it was obviously a kind of a decision that was kind of made for you. But now, like you're saying, you're bestowing it onto others. For what reason? Why do you enjoy it so much then?
Well, number one, it's open source. The community, it's .NET, it's MVC. Those right there are great reason to.
Yeah. So is it just because .NET and MVC is the kind of the key things that have been the kind of the drive, or?
.NET just happens to be the platform. MVC patterns really speak to my skills of architecting things out. So now I know there's other MVC frameworks out there like Rails and I think Django and Python, which I haven't used. But it just so works out that Visual Studio is .NET, and that's a wonderful IDE. And so .NET wasn't my motivator, but it was the MVC stuff that Umbraco eventually adopted. And right now it's just a good time to be a web developer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Being a web developer currently now is it's a lot more interesting and exciting these days. So obviously you've contributed on quite a few other packages in the Umbraco community, Archetype being one of them. So what do you enjoy about kind of creating Umbraco packages? Is it just something you like to do, or?
Well, I think when you use an open source system that virtually costs you nothing, I think that I have a compulsion to give back, and this is the only way I know how. And if Umbraco is successful, I'm successful because I'm kind of it's part of it's on my path to success, and this is my way of like say giving back and then answering questions and just being a part of it, and that's why I like making packages so much.
Nice. So today you're going to show us something totally new, or relatively new, that's only been out maybe a week or two now. So it's Bookshelf, yes?
Yes, it's called Bookshelf, and if you don't mind, I'll share a screen. And
of course. Let's
jump
over.
And let me know as soon as you can see it.
Let me 2 seconds. There we go. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So what Bookshelf is, it's kind of got two halves. It's got the people who just need information, and then it's got tools for people who want to share information.
Okay.
And what you're looking at here is a custom section on the lower left here. It's called Umbraco Bookshelf. In the tree here will be your books, your virtual books, so to speak. And then there's a dashboard on the right-hand side so you can download topics. So right now this is just a simple JSON feed coming out of GitHub. Eventually I'd like to maybe transfer this to our Umbraco so that can be curated over there. But for instance, one thing you can do is if you wanted the official Umbraco documentation, you could click this link and hit download. And what it does is reaching out to the Markdown project that's currently hosted by the core team. And it installs the book over here on the left. And
so when you say the book, it's literally it's pinging the GitHub repository and cloning the repository, or is it creating a copy, or is it just grabbing the Markdown files? What is it doing behind the scenes?
So there's no Git dependency, which makes it easy if you just want to read a book.
Yeah, of course.
And when we click that link there, this is actually the the download button on a GitHub repository. So it actually links there, and when it pulls it down, we're getting the whole project, but we're getting it as just a download, and it's not through Git, so there's no way to push back or anything like that. And if we were to look on our file system, it actually put it on our file system right here, and it's a exact copy of all the things in the repo.
Nice.
And the dashboard will let you know that, hey, this was updated last on April 9th at this time, and then when you download it, it timestamps it. So if we were to download this tomorrow, it would actually download it into a separate folder with tomorrow's date. That way it doesn't overwrite what's currently there. And that way we can also ensure there's no Git dependency, which I would like to have a Git connection, and actually we'll show one here. But for most people, they may just want to read and not necessarily contribute back. You can see in this dashboard here all the contributors to that particular repo, and we're pulling that dynamically right out of Git. And of course, you can visit the Git project page here, and this is where we're actually pulling it from. And then this button right here, this download zip, is the exact source that we're using to download that zip into here.
Okay, nice.
So if we were to just kind of briefly look through what downloaded, somebody inside the context of Umbraco, they can actually just start viewing code and everything because it's in Markdown. We're reading information right out of there. So one cool thing you can also do at the moment, there's this edit button, and it creates or opens up a side-by-side Markdown editor. So if we were to go to the top here and we want to change this to an H3 tag, it's in real time. It uses AngularJS. We could rewrite, put some notes in here. You can hide the editor, you can save it. So if we save this, and then we navigate away and come back, it's got all my changes there. So it's one way for somebody to actually download a resource and add to it, adding footnotes or whatnot. So that's one of the primary functions, is getting information out. So Bookshelf allows you to actually create ebooks as well. So for instance, I created a blank book here, and I could start creating contents, save it, and then if I go to my file system, it's tracked right here in my file system. So if I were to go in there, that's where that file is.
Okay.
What I can do is I can then give a Git connection by doing a git init for this particular book, and then create a repo, and now I can push and pull there, and basically what ends up happening is now I have an editor for my Git items. So for instance, I also have a book that I've been writing called Learn Umbraco 7, and if I were to go to the community page, you're going to see a bunch of things that I've cobbled together off the internet.
Okay, so inline images is working as well.
Absolutely. One new thing out there is script.io, and I haven't added it to my book, so what we can do is we can actually do that. If I can spell right. Of course, images push everything down, so I haven't really solved because images kind of push things down. It doesn't line up nicely side by side, but as we type, there's script.io, and I've already taken a screenshot earlier, placed it into a relative path called assets in this folder, and then I can link it there.
So this is assets in the chapter 1 folder?
Yeah, so if I were to actually go to chapter 1, I have an assets folder here, and it'll actually feed all these different sections in here. And if I go to there, it's going to be right there is my script.png.
Nice.
And that's how it showed up. So if I go ahead and save this, I can then open up my Git extensions. I see that I've added a link and an asset file. And then once I push this to the server, the date stamp on the dashboard will update, and somebody can see that
There's an update, and they can pull down the latest book or
Yep.
or the latest changes to the book.
Yep, of course, I made a change last night that I didn't pull on a different machine. And there you go. Now, if you were to go to the actual repo online, and to get there, and get control of my mouse. A couple things. This date stamp just updated, and that's Zulu time, so it's probably close to your time, isn't it? About 12.
Yeah.
And if we come back here to chapter 1, and by the way, you can visit and view all of this content right from GitHub as well.
Yeah.
But there it is. It just showed up. So I'm able to write a book and publish it without it being finished with a bookshelf.
Okay, nice. So is the intention, so obviously you've started writing quite a lengthy book there, it seems. If you expand Learn Umbraco 7, is
Yes.
this to be kind of used to kind of help people getting started with Umbraco? What's kind of the idea or the ethos behind kind of doing this?
Sure. So I've recently taken on a new position at a new job, and I've successfully convinced them that Umbraco is awesome.
Cool.
But one thing that I had to make a deal with them is I would have to provide them documentation and resourcing for Umbraco. And there's a ton of great stuff on the internet now. We've got our Umbraco, we've got blogs, we've got everything. However, sometimes the blog you find for version 4, it's for version 6 back office.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do was have something highly focused on just Umbraco 7. And this is my attempt to help onboard people who are very capable web developers but may have never heard of Umbraco, and they don't know that version 4 was like so, version 5 disappeared, version 6 was a great improvement, and version 7 comes along. All they know is Umbraco 7, and they don't know the history, and they don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
I also take the liberty in this book to have a MVC point of view. So I tend to, I've skipped over XSLT, things of that nature. So I'm going for a particular audience, and I'm really just trying to get my colleagues on the same page as myself. And that's really the genesis of the book. So the book came first, the Learn Umbraco 7 came first, and then the bookshelf idea came as a, boy, wouldn't it be great if we just had a context inside of Umbraco?
Yeah.
One other cool thing is if you were to have an editor that didn't know anything about Umbraco, maybe we could just drop in a How to Use Umbraco 7 as a book, give them access to the bookshelf, and then when they have a question, they might be able to help themselves. How do I do this? How do I do that?
So, or even, like you said, content editors. Obviously, everyone builds the Umbraco sites ever so slightly differently. You could tailor the documentation or a book or a documentation to your content editors specific to their site implementation rather than generic how to use Umbraco. This is a save and publish button. This is... You could give them very specific instructions in terms of maybe you've created custom Angular property editors, and you need to explain how they need to use certain things. That would be perfect.
Yeah. So this tree on the left here reads everything out of a file system, and I borrowed some code from Pear on the core, and kind of changed up the file tree controller to let's see, there we go, to basically read out. So what's going on here is editing a book is that simple. I also have different CRUD operations here in the menus.
So we can actually create these files from
Correct.
the back office.
Right, so if I just right-click create, I can call it section 1, or you can name it whatever you want. You can, if you don't tick this box, it'll assume you want a Markdown file. If you tick this, it'll assume a folder.
Yep.
And when you actually create a folder, it automatically gives you a README. The README is a default, so if I click on the folder, it actually knows to go inside and fetch the README. So that's kind of like your index page.
Yeah. So this is kind of a similar pattern to the GitHub repository, which works on the same kind of principles.
That's exactly right. And I've wasn't sure of certain conventions, so I went with GitHub flavored Markdown for everything, and the assets folder that you saw for images and PDFs. Those are just some of the basic conventions I've kind of had to come up with, or maybe they're already conventions, and maybe I just had to realize they're conventions.
Yeah.
There's a few security considerations. So if you download something off of Git, it's actually going to unzip this file, and it's going to only look for Markdown files and media files. So if you had a DLL or an executable, something like that, it'll actually not allow that to be placed on your system.
Okay.
So
when you're doing the extraction of the zip, you are only extracting Markdown files and, I presume, images of...
Yeah, so the media files would be images, PDFs, and anything else we whitelist in. I'm actually blacklisting CSS and JavaScript as well, just in case somebody gets creative with the JavaScript. And then there's a few issues that I've registered, and though there are issues, it's mainly feature requests. So if I were to go to the Bookshelf project, one security consideration is relative paths. So the ////, which is very common, it can be a security issue because you could go all the way up to, say, your web config. Now, I'm already preventing anyone from fetching anything other than a Markdown file or a media file, but that's one consideration.
Okay. Yep.
I want to add all kinds of stuff like search. So, for instance, the search right here in the top left would be a perfect place to be able to search all of these books at once.
Yeah.
But the problem is this is just going to be my content. And so I have a feature request in for the core.
I was going to say, I think it's a core issue, isn't it? Rather than something that, you can't implement yourself as of yet.
Right, and I actually found a thread with your name.
I was going to say, I think this rings a bell.
Yep, and thank you for that, because I didn't know if it was, I just couldn't figure it out, or somebody else was already trying to do it. But that would be the best place to put search. I might have to settle for having a dashboard search in the meantime, but I think it would be really great if there were several resources and you could search across many resources and have multiple book references. Then you can say, oh, that's right, that seems related, let me check to see what that says.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that's what Bookshelf is.
No, it's very nice. So it seems like you put a lot of effort to help your colleagues out in terms of writing this documentation. It seems quite, so if you expand the Learn in Braco 7, it seems quite, you put a lot of time and effort into kind of, so what, we've got 19 chapters, you've got appendixes, so yeah, it seems like you've put a lot of time and effort into this. Is this something you're hoping to kind of get contributions from the community, or is this just kind of...
Absolutely. So I think one of my issues here is getting help. I don't see it in there, but basically, yes. Oops, I'm in the wrong project, that's why. So if I go to Learn in Braco 7, which I hope all of you will want to do, if you want to contribute anything, please do so. Don't feel like you need to be invited. Don't feel like you can't edit something that's already been written. It's mostly me at this point.
Okay. Have you had other contributors so far?
I had one of my colleagues who as he's learning Umbraco, I actually tasked him with an issue here, and he he actually came through, and he's one contributor, and then the other one is just Mark. He provided something just to edit, but no, largely I haven't. Our traffic and stars are decent for. It's only been it's been about 4 weeks old. Yeah. I got some forks here, so to contribute, somebody just needs to fork it and send a pull request up, and I'm really just looking to make sure it's accurate. One thing I really do not like in documentation out there is the lack of the proper namespaces. A lot of times I have to hunt and peck for, I'll have the code, but I won't have the namespace. So I'm really trying to improve all
make sure
of
that you've got your using statements at the top with any maybe examples or anything like that. So rather than just like, in that example, you might have just had a property or a method or a class. Make sure that you reference namespaces so you know where to look.
Exactly. And I'm just as guilty of this because I've been with Umbraco long enough that I know exactly what a one-off line of code is meant, but somebody brand new to Umbraco probably needs more surrounding context.
Yeah, and whilst the core is getting a lot cleaner and leaner, there's still the kind of the weird transition phase of between old legacy namespaces and the stuff that's getting migrated over to newer namespaces. And like you said, me and you, we just know where to look just by habit. And like you said, someone totally new to the project, you wouldn't know where to look if it is going to be in a legacy namespace or is it going to be in a newer kind of leaner, meaner namespace. So no, I totally agree with you that on that.
Another trend that I happened to notice recently on our Umbraco forums was a lot of newcomers confuse iPublish content and iContent. A lot of them will try to do their getting for their templates with iContent, and they're unaware that really all their gets should be coming here out of a template. So I'm trying to guide people in that direction as well. What's the difference? The old version 4 API, you had the node, and then you had the document classes.
Yep.
And now it's the iPublish content and iContent. So there's just some basic definitions that I'm trying to do. And I'm sure somebody newcomer coming to this without me sitting there explaining to us will still have, I can't see the forest from the trees necessarily. And they'll probably still have some issues, but...
So do you think there would be overlap between this and the kind of the official documentation repositories? There's stuff that you've written so far, like that explanation, for example, on iContent versus iPublish content. Would that not be something good to go back into the main documentation repository? Yes,
and Paul Sterling, has said as much. And a lot of times I'll reference I'll say, hey, make sure you check the official docs. Make sure you check the official. Yeah. So I definitely don't want to redo work, and I don't want to supplant, usurp the core team as being more. What I see the official documentation should be is more. Hey, here's this class. Here's this method. Here's the specs for it. Maybe a little example. And what I'm trying to do is just kind of run a needle and thread through all the different things.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see how this may be viewed as double work or whatnot.
I don't know about double work, but I'd see there's some places where you've probably written some stuff, good content that would make sense to go back into the core documentation. But this is a different audience. This is a more, not a how-to, I see it, but a guide, I would say, in terms of understanding. This is, I want to do X, Y, Z, and this is, okay, I'd read your book and say, like, you've got a chapter there on forms, and I could read a relatively, I presume, relatively lengthy chapter or section on how to do forms with Umbraco, rather than...
So this chapter is about how to just do regular MVC with... Umbraco, and then you have the forums section by Tim Geissens, and that's probably more appropriate for them to explain how all that works, because I don't know how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then, there's probably no place for, like, say, chapter 19 here, where I found something useful that's just .NET and MVC, and it works with Umbraco. However, it's not sponsored by Umbraco necessarily.
Yeah, so. It's more something. This works great with Umbraco, but this probably it doesn't make sense to be like you say in the official documentation.
Right. So so there's definitely overlap, and when there's massive overlap, I tend to just say, hey, here's an example of what I'm talking about, but for more information, go to the official documentation, because I really want to drive traffic there. And I saw the last episode of uHangout where the new Umbraco is coming out, and that's where I really want to drive people to. for specifics and things like that.
Yeah, no, this is a really, really nice start, and I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this, and Bookshelf in general, really.
Well, thank you.
So is there, I don't know if you want to run through any of the code in terms of how it was built, or
sure.
get to maybe some of the nitty gritty?
I sure can. So this was a great experience too, learning on how to make a custom section in version 7. So this is the way the project is set up. We basically have custom section. So you just define a custom application. It's a very lean bit of code there, and this is actually in the book. And then there's custom trees, and this is kind of ugly. I won't really bother you with details.
No,
but basically, fine. I took what Pear did and extended it even further to work for only Markdown files.
Okay. Yeah.
You can change what directory your books download to. I add my custom actions to.
So that's the context menu. When you like right click on an item, you've got obviously create, reload nodes, rename, and delete.
Right. I'm actually taking advantage of GitHub right now. I actually have this JSON feed, and this is what shows up in the dashboard for books to download. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually pointing to a static file right now, which is not great because it means I have to update that file.
Yeah, and maintain it. Yeah.
And there's rate limits. If Bookshelf becomes too popular, it's possible that this feed might be delayed until the rate limit clears. And I'm also not able to track analytics, so I'm not tracking who's downloading what.
Yep.
So there's some drawbacks to that. And like I said, eventually I'd like to transfer that to Bracco, and then they can figure out who's downloading or if it's even useful. But before that would ever happen, I have to prove that Bookshelf is useful to somebody. So.
No, I'm sure it is definitely useful to a lot of people. So obviously you got some JavaScript there, but maybe you could show us how the kind of some of the plumbing is done in terms of so you obviously got quite a few Angular files there, or some JavaScript files.
So one of the magical things that happen here is, if you notice, the URL here is a custom URL. So you got Umbraco Bookshelf, Bookshelf tree, and then you got a folder. Mm-hmm. And what I've been able to do is figure out a way to map certain actions. So just clicking on that is going to map to an action in the back office here. So there's one called folder.
Yep.
And so when you click on that, this is the controller for it. However, somewhere there's probably a view. And those are held right here. So here's all your different actions. So when you click create, the create HTML is going to show on the right-hand side, the delete, and so on and so forth, file, folder, and move. So if we were to look at the folder, it's very basic markup. This is all Umbraco directives.
Yep.
And essentially what we're doing is I have a built-in resource that goes and gets a configuration, and it also goes and gets the contents of the folder. So somewhere on the back end is a controller listening to all this, and it's behind an Umbraco authorized controller. So if you wanted to do similar functionality but public information, you'd have to implement this a little differently.
Okay. Yep.
But here are some of the nitty-gritty, just how the controller works. Of course, this project's open source, so if somebody wants to do something similar as far as custom sections, they can just go to the Bookshelf repo and see what's going on there.
Yeah, it's always nice that people make their stuff open source. Personally, that's how I learn most of my stuff, is by learning from others and looking from example, and then kind of hacking or modifying it to kind of how I need it. So yeah, it's always good.
So the way I chose to do the Markdown, I'm actually doing it client side. I'm using this repo called Marked. It's mark.min. And then it also has a functionality with highlighting. So it actually do code highlighting and real-time markup. And that's what powers this edit and this real-time view here. So as you're typing it in, it's that JavaScript library that's actually
rendering the Markdown.
Yeah. So yeah, if we want to do a list, it's doing it in real time. One feature I want to add is potentially, not everybody knows Markdown, maybe a toolbar that allows like maybe a quick, hey, I need a headline 1 or I need a need an image and it scaffolds out the Markdown for you.
Yeah, I think that would be useful. Isn't there, I think there's obviously quite a few people, I think there's 1 or 2 Markdown editors or property editors that exist already in the community, so it'd probably be interesting to see what libraries they've done, because I think I may have seen a Markdown property editor with, like you say, buttons that kind of scaffold some of that stuff out. So yeah, a pull request from them or would it be totally useful?
Absolutely. So there's really nothing crazy about any of the plumbing here. However, you just have to follow the Umbraco convention. So when you want to route your own custom action, you should use a plugin tag, and then it'll route everything to back office, your tree name, and then your view there. And I've got a bunch of Angular going on, but it's nothing crazy. So when we want to get resources off the server, we just do random things like get file contents, get folder contents, download the URL from GitHub, all the standard stuff there. And then the services here, this is just regular stuff like saving files, deleting file, mostly your CRUD operations. And then finally, it's just using a regular old package manifest to register everybody.
Cool. Very, very nice. Okay. I'm just going to try and obviously I've got this fancy dancy new system today and I can't actually see if I've got any comments. So I'm just going to quickly check Twitter in the meantime. But is there anything else you want to kind of wrap up or demo we've not seen?
Nope. I just want to mention, though, that you can get Bookshelf from NuGet or Umbraco if you want the container here that allows you to read or edit. Or if you just want to go to the repos to read the Learn Umbraco 7, you don't even need Bookshelf, but you can do that as well.
Awesome. So let's just... maybe we can just take a couple of questions. I don't think I've got anything specific from anyone, but I think may have a few of my own. So, so like you said you've got no real dependency on Git, but is there something that you would maybe consider? So like I could for example, I've downloaded the book Learn Umbraco 7 from I've downloaded the book Umbraco 7 from your repository, and I'm making a change, and I want to do the commit kind of via the back office. So say I make a change, and could it potentially track changes via the back office, and then I could do a commit or a pull request back to you that you could then, this could get merged?
We could potentially do that. However,
I'm just thinking aloud here in terms of I would see it as a nice way for people maybe with little or no experience with Git or GitHub to kind of maybe edit, say, this Learn Umbraco 7 book, or even the official documentation. They see, I don't know, a typo, or they want to add maybe a little bit more explanation. Maybe they don't understand Git or GitHub, and I would see editing the docs via this book and this editor would be a really nice way.
Yeah, so the answer to your question is I'm not sure. It sounds really cool, but pulling it off technically would be a thing. So we might be able to use, I think it might have been you or someone who suggested we use a .NET GitHub integration, and then maybe post on behalf of a bot or send a pull request.
I think I did suggest this maybe a week or two ago. That you could potentially have a shared user that this Umbraco back office Bookshelf package uses. I don't know, Bookshelf, Umbraco user, GitHub user, whatever. And then you authenticate and you post, like you say, on that behalf of that user. But yeah,
so that sounds actually really awesome, and it's rattling around in my head some more about how would we actually pull that off, or maybe we do a register if you do have a GitHub account, register, authorize locally, and then somehow programmatically do the pull request as well. So those are things when I get some in between time.
I know. It's like you said. Technically, it's quite a big challenge. It's not something it's trivial. It's something that's quite involved and quite in depth. But in the grand scheme of things, if you could pull it off, I think that would make it the killer package. Then that would make it really kind of the icing on the cake.
I agree, and I'm definitely going to be thinking about it.
Toying with the idea. Awesome.
Yep.
So have you got anything else in the pipeline apart from Bookshelf in the meantime?
Not really. Nothing I can really share with the community that would be like super life-changing. I'm mainly just creating new projects in Umbraco 7 right now, training some of the local people in my shop here.
Okay. So you're getting quite insightful feedback from, I think you told me before we started that they're not been Umbraco developers or necessarily even .NET developers. Have you managed to kind of get useful feedback that could potentially go feedback to the core, or in terms of they're trying to use something and this doesn't make sense to them? Maybe we should give this back as a suggestion or feedback.
They're actually very optimistic. They had considered using Orchard before I got here, or just straight MVC.
Okay.
.NET, and I was able to convince them that Umbraco is pretty much MVC with a administration tool that is given to you for free, and then you can use, say, Petapoco or something like that and manage some of your own data. Yeah. So it's been very positive feedback. One of the feedbacks was it's kind of hard to know what to Google and when the documentation, but I know all that's being addressed right now with the new Umbraco. Mm-hmm. But when any large organization takes on something new, they need to be reassured that if Kevin gets hit by a meteor, there's some information somewhere that they can rely on. So it kind of loops back to the whole reason I'm doing a lot of this. So nothing real exciting other than spreading Umbraco.
Spreading the love, it seems.
Yeah.
Spreading the love and teaching new disciples.
Right.
Awesome. So I think we'll wrap up there. It's obviously something I need to think about for next week, is how to get comments and feedback. I would imagine it's all been very good and very positive. We'll find out afterwards.
Okay.
Something on my over part. It's been great to talk to you, Kevin, and I will hopefully speak to you sometime soon.
Yep. Have a good one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye. So just before we wrap up, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the Indiegogo fundraiser campaign backers. Obviously has helped fund this fancy new tool that I've still trying to master and learn. Hopefully this is not all been a failure. Without you guys, we couldn't make this. So thank you very much. So until next time, enjoy. Thanks. Bye.